It is a mystery that has captivated people across the entire globe for centuries. Does Bigfoot really exist? Well, now there is a man called Snake the Bigfoot Hunter who claims he has found actual Bigfoot remains.
The DNA doesn't say ape. That is the sentence that broke the internet in the summer of 2026. For over a century, the story of Bigfoot had a shape everyone agreed on: a giant creature, a hairy hominid, some kind of undiscovered great ape, wandering the deep forests of North America, always just out of frame, always just beyond the reach of proof. That was the story. It sounded settled. It has been repeated in every documentary, every campfire, every blurry frame of film since 1967. But then a man in upstate New York claimed he had done something no one had ever done before. Not a footprint, not a howl, not a shadow in the trees, a body. A real, decomposing 8-foot body pulled from the Adirondack Mountains. And when he claimed to have sent its tissue to a lab, the result that came back did not confirm the story everyone expected. It contradicted it completely, because the number that came back, if it is real, was not the number for an ape. It was a number that pointed somewhere far stranger, somewhere much closer to home. This is the story of that claim, what the science behind it actually says, and why the answer, true or false, tells us something remarkable about what we've been looking for all along. To understand why this claim landed the way it did, you have to start with the man who made it. His name is Charles Stewart, though almost no one calls him that. He goes by Snake, Snake the Bigfoot Hunter. And for years, he was exactly the kind of figure the mainstream ignored. A self-taught tracker working the dense woods along the New York and Vermont border, recording sounds, following signs, chasing something most people had long since filed under folklore. Then, in the fall of 2024, Snake says everything changed. He claims he found remains. Not a sighting, remains. An 8-foot, 300-pound body, decomposing in the wilderness of the Adirondacks. Now, here is where we have to be precise, because this is exactly the point where a story like this usually falls apart. Snake's account has not been independently verified. No peer-reviewed institution has confirmed it. Prominent Bigfoot researchers have publicly called it a hoax. All of that is true, and we are going to come back to it. But set aside for a moment whether the body is real, and look instead at what Snake claims the body was, because that is where this stops being an ordinary Bigfoot story and becomes something else entirely. Snake says he did not just find a body. He says he tested it. According to Snake, he provided samples, blood, hair, tissue, to a contact connected to a veterinary DNA lab at Cornell University. And according to Snake, the results that came back were not what anyone hunting a mythical ape would expect. He claims the specimen was not an animal at all in the way people assumed. He claims the DNA came back at roughly 58% Neanderthal and roughly 41% human. Stop and sit with that for a second. Not gorilla, not a new species of primate. Neanderthal and human. The two archaic and modern branches of our own family tree. If that claim were true, and we will get to that enormous if, it would rewrite the entire premise of what Bigfoot is supposed to be. For 100 years, the search assumed we were looking for an animal. This claim says we would instead be looking for a relative, a cousin, something that split off from the human story and never came back into the light. That single reframing is why this story traveled across the world in a matter of days. It took the oldest monster in American folklore and quietly moved it out of the category of beast and into the category of family. But a claim is not evidence. So let's do what the mythology never does. Let's actually look at the science. Here is what real DNA analysis can and cannot do, because the gap between those two things is the entire story. When geneticists sequence ancient or unknown remains, they compare the recovered genetic material against enormous reference databases. Databases built from thousands of modern humans, from Neanderthal genomes recovered from bone, from Denisovan samples, from the full catalog of known life. Contamination is the constant enemy. A single human hair, a technician's breath, a trace of bacteria in decomposed tissue, Any of it can corrupt a result. This is why extraordinary genetic claims require something Snake's story does not yet have. Published data, independent replication, a named lab willing to attach its reputation to the finding. And that is the crack running straight through the center of this story. Cornell University has not published these results. There is no peer-reviewed paper. The analysis, as described, rests almost entirely on Snake's own account of what a contact told him. In science, that is not proof. That is a starting point at best. Matthew Moneymaker, one of the most recognized figures in the Bigfoot research community, dismissed the whole thing outright, calling it a hoax and calling the body a fake. The skepticism is not a detail. It is the mainstream position. So the honest answer, the one the clickbait headlines skip, is this. As of now, there is no verified scientific evidence that Bigfoot exists, and there is no independently confirmed DNA proving that these particular remains are anything other than what critics say they are. That is where the record stands. And yet, this is what makes the story worth telling. The shape of Snake's claim accidentally lands on top of something in real genetics that is completely true. Because the idea at the heart of his claim, that a large, archaic, human-adjacent creature could have walked these forests, is not as absurd as the reflexive laugh suggests. Not because of Bigfoot, because of what science has actually found. Consider what we now know for certain. Every living person outside of sub-Saharan Africa carries a measurable percentage of Neanderthal DNA, typically somewhere between 1 and 2%, because our ancestors met them, lived alongside them, and had children with them. That is not folklore. That is established, replicated, peer-reviewed fact. Neanderthals were real. They were powerfully built, cold-adapted, larger and stronger than us in key ways, and they shared the landscape with modern humans for thousands of years. Then there are the Denisovans, an entire archaic human population that science did not even know existed until 2010, identified almost entirely from DNA extracted from a single finger bone in a Siberian cave. An entire branch of humanity, hidden for tens of thousands of years, revealed by genetics alone. Think about what that means. Within the last 20 years, real science confirmed that not one, but multiple large, archaic, human relative populations walk the earth alongside us, and that we carry their genes inside us right now. The premise that there could be an undiscovered branch of the human family is not the fantasy part of Snake's story. That part is real. It has already happened. The question science actually argues about is not whether archaic human cousins existed. It is whether any of them could have survived, undetected, into the modern age. And on that question, the mainstream answer is a firm no. The fossil record, the population math, and the sheer difficulty of hiding a breeding population all point against it. That is the strange power of this story. It takes a real scientific truth, that we shared this planet with other kinds of humans, and stretches it one impossible step further into the trees of upstate New York. There is one more layer worth pulling apart, because it reveals how these claims are built. Snake didn't stop at the DNA number. He described the body itself in vivid detail. He claimed the specimen had a particular anatomical feature, a bone found in certain other mammals but not in modern humans, and he built a whole behavioral theory on top of it, describing the creature as nomadic, solitary, aggressive, moving alone through the wilderness rather than living in family groups. He described tooth analysis suggesting the individual died young. He warned that more of them might still be out there, living hidden lives in the remote caves and hollows of the region. Notice the structure of that. It is the same architecture as every enduring cryptid legend, and the same architecture, honestly, as the best documentaries. A physical anomaly, a behavioral explanation, a warning that there is more out there. It is compelling precisely because it is shaped like a discovery. But a story shaped like a discovery is not the same thing as a discovery. The anatomy claim, like the DNA claim, has not been independently examined by scientists willing to publish what they found. The body has been displayed publicly, reportedly drawing tens of thousands of curious visitors at a state fair. But display is not analysis. A crowd is not a laboratory. So where does that leave us? With two truths sitting side by side, and both of them matter. The first truth is the skeptical one, and it has to be said plainly. There is no confirmed evidence that Bigfoot is real. Snake's remains have not been scientifically verified. The DNA result he describes has not been published, replicated, or confirmed by any institution that has put its name to it. Leading researchers in the field call it a hoax. If you are asking whether science has proven that a Neanderthal-human hybrid is roaming the Adirondacks, the answer, clearly and honestly, is not yet, and almost certainly not. But the second truth is the one that makes this story worth more than a laugh. The reason a claim like this can capture the entire world in a matter of days is that it brushes up against something genuinely profound that real science has already proven. We were not alone. For most of human history, we shared this planet with other kinds of people. Neanderthals, Denisovans, and quite possibly branches we still haven't named. They were tall, they were strong, they were built for cold and wilderness. And they are not entirely gone, because we carry pieces of them in our own cells right now. The monster we've been telling stories about for 100 years turns out to be a distorted echo of a real memory buried in our DNA. The memory of the other humans who once walked the forests with us. That is the twist the headlines can't quite hold. Bigfoot, as a verified creature, remains unproven, a claim awaiting evidence that has not arrived. But the deeper idea underneath it, the idea that humanity was once a family of many kinds and not just one, is not a myth at all. It is one of the most extraordinary findings modern genetics has ever produced. The body in the Adirondacks may be exactly what the skeptics say it is, but the story it accidentally tells about who else we shared this world with and how much of them still lives inside us is real, and it is stranger and more human than any legend about a monster in the woods. The DNA remembers what the forest forgot. We were never the only ones, and whether or not Snake found what he says he found, that part of the story was always true. If this gave you something, a like helps this channel reach more people who care about the deeper history that only becomes visible through DNA. Subscribe if you want more, and tell me in the comments, do you think there's anything still out there in the deep woods that science hasn't caught up with yet? Drop your answer below, and don't forget to subscribe.